good morning, and welcome to the All Together podcast, your love first connection, anytime, anywhere. We are continuing the series about the Today.Church Vision and Values. Now, Today Church has been casting the vision of house churches for a while now, and this Sunday is the first scheduled Sunday morning house church, and we're really excited. If you'd like some more information about that, there's a link in this podcast description. For those who can't be there in person, this All Together podcast episode is here to keep you connected. Today Church is anytime, anywhere, Jesus people gather, love first. As we talk about our core values, this week we are covering faith and power. Talking about the vision of Today Church. Of course, we say love God, love people, make disciples, but there's a lot more to it than that. Even though that's very, very simple, there are some attributes that we should be to love God, love people, and make disciples. Our vision verse today comes from John 5. And the writer in the first part of that chapter is talking about the love of God, and that the love of God leads us to keep his commandments, and that his commandments don't. He says here in 1 John 5, verse 4, because everyone who has been fathered by God conquers the world. This is the conquering power of the world. Our Now, who's the person who conquered the world except the one who believes that Jesus is the Son of God? So today, as we talk about two core values, faith and power, we know that it is the love of God that allows us into the attributes. And so one of our core values is faith. We like to say impossible is not in our vocabulary. Disciples, don't play it safe, because all are possible. And the accountable question, have I told to move yet? And if you're not familiar with that story, in Mark 11, Jesus says to his disciples and to us that if we have faith, just the smallest amount of faith, that we can actually move mountains. Now, that sounds have access to working faith power. But why? Off to brag about it? Actually move mountains? Well, we never see Jesus physically moving a mountain. We don't see the disciples physically doing that. I believe it's a metaphor. Nothing can stand in our way if we truly believe. But the belief is just head knowledge. Belief turns into faith when we put our belief into action. And what is this faith for? Well, it is to give us power and to give us access to power, but it is for a specific reason. In Acts 1 and 8, Jesus says that you will upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the farthest parts of the earth. We like to say here, near, far, and wide. The power of the Holy Spirit empowers us to be witnesses. And we need to have that kind of faith, because that mountain moving faith us to act in faith and to experience God's power. Because, and this is another one of our core values, power. Following Jesus isn't normal. It's miraculous. Jesus promised, and we seek and expect the power of the Holy Spirit, because disciples receive spiritual gifts. And the accountable question for this value, am I asking for more? Jesus said that the Father wants to give his children, us, good gifts, and that he will give the Holy Spirit if we ask. What are you asking for? Am I asking for more? So let's talk about faith and power from Matthew, reading the story where Jesus sent his 12 disciples out. Now, there's several instances where Jesus sent disciples out, and these were training missions. And the instructions were somewhat different for how he sent them out, but there are some things that are the same about how he sent them out. So some of the training missions, he said, do this thing. Some he said, do this thing. But there is some common ground that I believe we all should follow as we go and make disciples as Jesus commanded. Matthew 10, verses 1 through 15, and we're reading today from the NET translation. Jesus called his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits so they could cast them out and heal every kind of disease and sickness. Now, before we go on, it may seem like, okay, well, this is just for the 12. But actually, we see after the crucifixion and resurrection, Jesus promised this same kind of power. He said that we, as his followers, would have the power to cast out devils, to lay hands on the sick, and they will recover. But this is a training mission where Jesus is beginning to introduce his disciples to who they really are in him. And so as he sent them out, he gave them authority. And as we look in Matthew 28, 19 and 20, where Jesus sent the disciples out and us with the Great Commission, go and make disciples, we realize that before he sent them out and before he gave us that command, he says that all authority has been given to him. Therefore, go. And in this instance, Jesus is giving his disciples the same authority that he had. And we have that same authority today. Let's go on. Verse 2. Now these are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas, and Matthew, the tax collector, James, the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. This was not a collection of superstars. These were ordinary guys in the first century. They weren't scholars. They weren't, the religious elite, but he chose them. And it's interesting to realize that he chose them based on personal encounters. He went to them and in many instances said, come and see, or follow me. And these ordinary men were a part of this extraordinary mission where he gave them power to cast out devils, to heal. And this is how he sent them. Verse 5, Jesus sent out those 12, those ordinary guys, instructing them as follows. Do not go to Gentile regions and do not enter any Samaritan town. Go instead to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now, this was the first mission, and this was Jesus' first purpose, was to go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. This wasn't the only purpose and the final purpose, because he instructed in Matthew 28, go make disciples of all the nations. But this was a training ground. This was a beginning exercise where Jesus is saying, go first to who you know and who you are a part of. And I think that's a great principle for us. We don't have to go overseas in order to be a disciple maker. Sometimes we just need to start where we are and who we know and who we are a part of. Let's go on. Verse 7. As you go, preach this message. The kingdom of heaven is near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse lepers, cast out demons. Freely you received, freely give. Do not take gold, silver, or copper in your belts, no bag for the journey, or an extra tunic, or sandals or staff, for the worker deserves his provisions. Now, first, verse 7, Jesus said, preach this message, share this message, proclaim this message. The kingdom of heaven is near. Jesus proclaimed the gospel, the good news of the kingdom, the good news of doing things God's way. And as he sent these disciples out on this training mission, giving them all of the power, but he also said, this time, he said, don't take anything with you. And I believe this was them being able to learn and grow and test their faith as well. Because later he sent them out and he said, yeah, go ahead and take some stuff. But this time he said, don't take any money, don't take a bag, don't take an extra coat or sandals or anything extra. The worker deserves his provision. But this wasn't a global instruction. This was for this particular mission. Then in Matthew 10, verse 11, he says, whenever you enter a town or village, find out who is worthy there and stay with them until you leave. As you enter the house, give it greetings. And if the house is worthy, let your peace come on it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. Now, this principle applies in every way that Jesus sent out his disciples, and I believe it applies to us today. In Luke 10, we have another instance where he sends disciples out, and he says a very similar thing. He says, when you go into a city, give your peace or give your greeting to a house, and if they respond, then stay there. But if your peace returns to you, then go on, and we'll talk about what that looks like as we read the next verses. But as you endeavor to share the good news, as you work to make disciples, this principle of finding a person of peace is so important, because you can't argue anyone into the kingdom. We're not looking to convert anyone. That is not our job. What we're looking for is who God is drawing. Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice. And so you're extending peace to see who God is drawing. And if your peace remains there, stay there. But if not, well, here's what you do. We go on to verse 14. And if anyone will not welcome you or listen to your message, shake the dust off your feet as you leave that house or that town. I tell you the truth, it will be more bearable for the region of Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. Now, as a pastor, it is so difficult when people don't receive the good news. It's difficult when people walk away. It's difficult when they won't even listen to the good news. But Jesus says, you know what? Don't worry about that. If they don't welcome you, that's not your job. Just shake the dust off of your feet and go somewhere else. We are looking for those persons of peace who God is already drawing. And we have the power by faith to do what God has called us to do. And that's why we focus on faith, because impossible isn't in our vocabulary. Power, because following Jesus isn't normal, it's miraculous. And that is how we love God, love people, and make disciples. Just believe in Jesus, and you have all the power you need when you put faith into action. Who can you reach? Who is Jesus sending you to encounter? Where is that person of peace in your life? Have faith that you have the power that you need to go and make disciples just as Jesus commanded. Thank you so much for being a part of this All Together podcast, your Love First connection, anytime, anywhere. And remember, follow Jesus today. Love first.